Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. As we wrap up this year, and probably already thinking about those resolutions, we're going to explore a slightly different approach to goal setting this time around, especially with well-being in mind. We're diving into a blog post today called Road to Success 2025 Well-Being Guide. It's by Omar Osama. It was published December 9th, 2024. What really caught my eye was, you know how most of us just kind of set any old goal? Well, Omar goes beyond that. He really digs into the why behind our goals, which feels so much more substantial than just, like
Mm.
a fleeting New Year's resolution. Yeah, it's like he's pushing us to be way more intentional, right? It's not about checking a box and saying you set goals. It's about choosing the goals that really matter to you. You know the goals that actually align with what you want for your life,
Yeah.
your career,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Exactly. And one of the first things that kind of jumped out at me was this concept of intensity. He talks about shifting from a normal routine to a more challenging one, if I'm being honest. When I first read that,
Yeah.
my first thought was, do I really need more intensity in my life right now? But then, I don't know, I sat with it for a minute and I started thinking,
Well, yeah, it's so easy to get comfortable, isn't it? But think about it this way. When was the last time you really felt like you were growing or learning something new? Chances are it was probably when you were pushing yourself beyond that comfort zone.
that's such a good point.
Mm.
I remember when I first started learning to play guitar, I hit a plateau for months. Like I was practicing, but I wasn't really getting any better.
Mm.
And then I decided to challenge myself by learning this really difficult song. And it was frustrating at first. Oh, man, it was so frustrating. But once I finally nailed it, I felt like I leveled up my skills, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's the power and intensity, right? It's about pushing yourself just enough to trigger real growth. So thinking about your own life for a sec. What routine
Yeah.
or area could use a little dose of intensity right now? Is there something you've been putting off because it just feels too challenging?
Okay, so let's say we've identified that area where we want to apply some intensity. How do we actually go about setting those goals? Omar has a framework for that too, right?
Oh, he does. And it's surprisingly simple but effective. He suggests dividing your goals into two main categories, career and life. And you know what? That immediately resonated with me because it addresses something that we all struggle with, work-life balance.
That makes total sense.
Uh-huh.
But isn't it all kind of intertwined these days? I mean, our personal lives affect our work and vice versa.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely overlap, but having those distinct categories, it can really help you prioritize
Right.
and make sure you're not neglecting any of the important areas in your life. And, even within career goals, Omar breaks it down further into technical and personal goals.
Okay, now it's getting interesting. Give me some examples. What would fall under each category?
Sure. So technical goals, those are more concrete, skill-based objectives. Things like earning a new certification, maybe mastering a specific software, or even learning a new language for your job. It's all about building those hard skills and expertise.
So like the things you could list on your resume, essentially?
Yeah.
What about the personal career goals?
Yeah, those are more about developing your soft skills, your interpersonal effectiveness. This could be anything from improving your communication skills to working on your leadership style or becoming a better team player.
I've always struggled with public speaking. Like I get so nervous and I stumble over my words. Maybe setting a personal career goal around that could help me feel more confident, in meetings and presentations.
Absolutely. And think about the impact that could have on your career overall. Being able to clearly communicate your ideas. It's a huge asset in any field.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these categories really work together. You need both the technical skills and the personal skills to really thrive.
And it doesn't stop at just our careers. Omar also emphasizes, life goals, which could be anything from health and fitness to relationships, hobbies, travel, personal growth, anything really.
Right, that's a good reminder. It's
Yeah.
easy to get caught up in the work stuff
Yeah.
and totally forget about everything else.
Exactly. And those life goals, they can actually make you even more successful in your career too. If you're feeling burnt out and stressed all the time, you're not going to perform your best at work. But if you're taking care of yourself, mind and body, through those life goals, you'll have way more energy and focus to bring to your work.
So it's all about finding that balance and making sure that the goals you set are actually things that matter to you, both personally and professionally.
Exactly. And that leads us to another big point that Omar makes, finding your passion. He actually says, and I quote, "Don't put goals just to tell you are setting an amazing goal for the new year."
I love that. It's so easy to set goals based on what we think we should be doing instead of what we're actually excited about.
Right. I've definitely been guilty of that myself. There was a time when I was so focused on, you know, climbing the corporate ladder that I kind of lost sight of what I actually enjoyed about my work. I was setting these goals that looked good on paper, but they didn't really light me up inside.
So what happened? Did you end up switching careers or
Mhm.
changing your goals completely?
I did make some changes eventually, but it took me a while to realize that I wasn't really passionate about the path I was on. I wish I had listened to Omar's advice sooner. It would have saved me a lot of time and energy.
That's interesting because he doesn't pretend like it's all going to be easy.
Mm.
Even if you're pursuing those goals you're passionate about, he dedicates a big chunk of the blog post to talking about challenges
Hmm.
and setbacks.
Yeah, I really like that about his approach. It feels really refreshing. He's not promising some magical, challenge-free path to success.
Yeah.
He acknowledges that things will get tough, but he also emphasizes how important preparation is and resilience. He even uses that analogy of shifting from a normal routine to a challenging one to kind of illustrate that discomfort we might feel when we face those obstacles.
Right, and he really stresses how important preparation is for handling that pressure. It's like that saying, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle.
Exactly. It's all about building up that resilience and those coping mechanisms so that when the challenges do come up, you're ready for them. He even gives a really practical tip. Stay prepared on a weekly basis. By keeping our skills sharp and our mind's ready, we can navigate those tough times more easily.
He uses a really great analogy to get that point. He talks about how pressure feels way worse when we're suddenly shifted into a new state without being prepared. It's like being thrown into the deep end of a pool.
Yeah.
When you don't even know how to swim, you're going to panic, and the whole experience is going to be way more stressful.
Yeah. Whereas if you ease yourself into the water, or even better, practice your strokes beforehand, you're going to feel way more confident and capable. That's what Omar's getting at, with that whole idea of staying prepared every week, putting in the work consistently, so you're not starting from scratch when something unexpected comes up.
So what does that preparation actually look like? Does he give any specific examples?
He keeps it pretty general, which I think is on purpose, because it lets you adapt it to your own goals and situation. But he does mention things like setting aside time each week to practice a new skill, or reviewing your goals, even just reflecting on your progress to see where you need to focus.
So it's not about some crazy strict schedule. It's more about finding a system that works for you and helps you consistently make progress on your goals and be ready for anything.
Exactly. And that's a key takeaway. It's not about being perfect. It's about being proactive, creating that system that helps you maintain that balance and that momentum as you work towards your goals.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder, he talks about embracing discomfort to grow. But how do we know if we're pushing ourselves too hard? When does intensity become counterproductive?
That is a great question. And I think it's something we all struggle with. It's a fine line between challenging ourselves and, pushing ourselves to burnout.
So how do we find that balance? Does Omar have any thoughts on that?
He doesn't go into too much detail, but he does say to listen to your body and your mind. When you're feeling overwhelmed all the time, stressed, exhausted, might be a sign to slow down a little.
So it's not about just pushing through no matter what. It's about paying attention to your limits and taking care of yourself.
Exactly. Remember, his whole point is about well-being. So if your goals are starting to hurt your well-being, you might want to rethink your approach.
That makes sense. It's a good reminder to be ambitious, but also compassionate with ourselves.
Yeah, I like that. And it connects back to that idea of balancing your career and life goals. He actually says that maintaining a solid life goal can really help you balance between the pressure at work and enjoying life.
That's so important these days, especially when work and life are so blended together. We have to make sure there's space for things we enjoy outside of work.
Absolutely. And, those life goals might be more important to some people than career goals. Some people are all about staying healthy, trying new things, nurturing their relationships. It's all about finding that sweet spot, between pushing yourself and taking care of yourself. And that balance is going to look different for everyone.
It's like realizing well-being isn't one size fits all. It's about what works for you and creating a life that feels good and sustainable.
Exactly. And that's a perfect transition to the last thing I wanted to mention. Omar talks about how every new year brings new challenges that really test our growth from the previous years.
It's like he wants us to see challenges as opportunities to learn and grow, not just obstacles to get past.
Exactly. I love that perspective. It's not about avoiding the hard stuff. It's about learning how to handle it.
And it makes me think about all the challenges we've faced. What did we learn from them? And how can we use those lessons to do even better in the future?
Yeah.
Wow, it really does feel like we've come full circle. We started by talking about intensity and how it can push us, to
Mhm.
grow. But now we're seeing how that growth isn't just about, you know, charging ahead at full speed. It's also about looking back at what we've already been through and learning from it.
Yeah, it's like he's saying the past isn't something to just forget about. It's actually a resource. You know those challenges we faced? The setbacks? They've made us who we are today, and they can help us figure out how to approach the future.
That's a really powerful way to look at it. It's not about letting those experiences hold us back,
Hmm.
but seeing how much stronger we are because of them.
Right. And you know what? It reminds me of something we were talking about earlier, preparation. By looking back at those past challenges, we can see how we reacted, the good and the bad. We can see what we did well and where we struggled. And that can help us get ready for similar challenges in the future.
It's like building our own personal toolkit of strategies and coping mechanisms based on what we've actually lived through. That's got to be way more helpful than anything we could read in a
Oh,
book.
absolutely. And it brings us right back to Omar's main point, well-being. True well-being isn't just about being happy all the time. It's about being able to handle those ups and downs. You know, the stuff that life throws at us.
It's realizing that challenges are just part of being human, and they can actually make us stronger in the end, wiser,
Yeah.
more adaptable.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. And it's a really hopeful message as we head into a new year. It's not about being perfect or avoiding the hard stuff. It's about embracing the whole journey, knowing we have the strength to handle it all.
I love that. That's a perfect note to end on. As we wrap up this deep dive into Omar's well-being guide, I want to leave you with one last question to think about. What's one challenge from this past year that taught you something valuable, something you can use as you set your goals for the future?
Take some time to really think about it. Big or small, what did those experiences teach you about yourself? What helped you get through them? And how can you use those lessons to create an even better year ahead?
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.